As you guys know, because you've all signed up to the event, what we're going to be talking about today is emotional intelligence in the office. I'm sure this is a topic that some of you already got some ideas or knowledge on, but I thought it would be a really nice place to start with these new events that we're going to be doing on Backstage, where we're focusing in each week on a different element of corkscrew thinking. So this week is emotional intelligence. Oh, and I can click through. Okay, so before we start, I just want you to ask yourself the following questions. These are just ones for you to reflect on and to think. Yeah, we won't be sharing the answer, but just to think on what your answer is. Okay, so when was the last time you stopped to think about your emotional intelligence? Do you consider yourself to be emotionally intelligent? And finally, when was the last time you consciously worked on your emotional intelligence? Okay, so before we get going thinking else, I just want to kind of debunk a bit of a thing with this, I think, confusion that sometimes comes from emotions and emotional intelligence. I know this is something over the last few years that I've found really interesting to learn about because I've always been a very emotional person. My family and friends will tell you that I kind of wear my heart on my sleeve, and I think for a long time I got that confused with my emotional intelligence. So we'll just go through a few key differentiating points. So a frequently made assumption is that emotional people, like myself, who are able to communicate their emotions are therefore emotionally intelligent. But this is not the case. Emotional intelligence goes beyond expressing your emotions. It involves identifying, expressing, and managing your own emotions. It then extends to identifying and managing those emotions of people around you. And it requires maintaining both good social relationships and a calm and clear head when under unexpected pressure. So again, I'd like you to ask yourself, do you consider yourself to be emotionally intelligent? Okay, so why is emotional intelligence so important? Well, let's think of a scenario of what happens without emotional intelligence. It can lead to judgment, quite often misjudgment of people and situations. Bullying, quite often when you look into the reason why people bully is because it's linked to their own insecurities and prejudices that perhaps they haven't been educated about. It can lead to stereotypes, poor decision making, ignorance, a lack of trust, loneliness, stress, and frustration. So as a starting point, I'd say if we want to avoid those things, then perhaps emotional intelligence is pretty important. Oh, sorry. So what if we were to tell you that we have on average over 400 emotional experiences every day? That stat shocked me a lot. I'm like, I know that I experience my emotions every day, but 400? I was like, wow. So then I started looking into, okay, well, what emotions are these? How many of the following emotions do you think you could recognize or recall? When I saw this, I was like, wow, because even you go into happy, I don't know whether I'm able to specifically recognize and acknowledge the different types of happy emotions I might be feeling. It almost felt like a new language that I needed to learn. We're going to be returning to this wheel of emotions later as I talk about how this can help develop our emotional intelligence. Like I said, we'll return to this shortly. So why more specifically is emotional intelligence in the office important? Okay, so emotional intelligence has key impact on leadership, team performance, but also team morale, because those things are different. You can have great team performance, but outside of the task that people can be completing, if the morale is low, then in future tasks, that will then affect the performance. It has massive impact on decision making if we try and make decisions when we're feeling stressed, or perhaps decision based on someone else's emotion that we think we understand, but perhaps we're completely misjudging someone else's emotion. It can lead to occupational stress, staff turnover, and personal well-being. Here's a quote from a book that I've been reading recently that I just wanted to share with you guys. So it says, "Many of us now labor with our minds more than our bodies. Our work requires from us continuous interaction, creativity, personal service, and intellectual concentration, and is therefore susceptible to the prevailing emotional atmosphere. The quality of our efforts has grown reliant on a sense of meaning, respect, inner fulfillment, encouragement, and a spirit of friendship." when I read this, you know, when it's one of those things that you kind of know, but it takes seeing it written down like that for it to really hit home. I was like, wow. And the chapter in this book was talking about how the nature of our work has changed, and how now more than ever, a lot of people are office-based or working and interacting with a lot of people during the day. And so when I talked about that quote earlier of having these 400 emotional experiences every day, a lot of those, or even more of those, now take place in our workplace. And so then therefore giving ourselves the time to really understand our own emotions and the emotions of other people we're working with, I don't think has ever been as important as it is now. So it's just a quote that I think is quite powerful. So again, having listened to that quote and read it, do you consider yourself to be emotionally intelligent? How could you develop your own emotional intelligence in the office? What I'm now going to do is run through just a few tips. I'm not piling too many in here because I want this session to be bite-sized and enough that you can just take it in today and hopefully use a few of the things I'm talking about. But we'll see what tips it is that I'd like to share. So you have to start with understanding your own emotions. This is true for developing your emotional intelligence in your personal life or in the workplace. In order to do this, you have to try and pay attention to your own emotions at any given point throughout the day. And when I thought about this, I was like, okay, how can you practically achieve this? And I was like, okay, well, why not set yourself a reminder at lunch? You could take 3 minutes to reflect on how your morning has been, to consider what emotions you've experienced and how have they then affected your productivity and decision making. Because it might be that you've come in for the day and you've got your tasks done. It might be by lunchtime you've achieved those tasks, but actually I don't know, maybe you're feeling frustrated. And it's important, rather than just moving forwards into the afternoon, continuing to feel frustrated, to think, okay, well, what's happened in my morning to make that happen? So it's really about building in time to become more conscious of your own emotions. And that leads on to the second point, to perhaps not on a daily basis, but every so often take stock of your own emotional strengths and weaknesses. So I'd recommend choosing a neutral time and environment where you could go and evaluate your own emotions, and to think about your motivations, your fears, your limitations and strengths. So perhaps this leads on from the first point. Perhaps you've been having check-ins with yourself to think about your emotions during the day at work. And perhaps now what you're doing after 3 months of having done that is going, okay, well, what's happening that leads to negative emotions in the workplace? And what is it that's contributing to me really succeeding and feeling like I'm in control and doing really well at work? So I think just setting these times to understand yourself and your emotions is really important. So I said the wheel would reappear, and here it is. So using this wheel, what I think it can be really useful to do, if you were to take one of those check-ins with yourself to think how your emotions have been at any given time, is to try and find your emotion within this wheel. So perhaps you knew that you were feeling angry, but don't just stop at understanding that it was anger. This is a bit like the corkscrew activity, whereby you break down big problems in order to find solutions. So it's with the micro solutions that we talk about. So rather than just going, oh, that made me feel really angry, it's okay, well, what kind of anger was it? Perhaps I'm angry because I feel that I was let down. Perhaps someone said that they would do something, or a piece of work they were going to deliver was critical to you submitting a piece of work, and they let you down and didn't tell you that they weren't going to be able to deliver on the task. It could be something more personal. Perhaps someone in your team has been promoted and you feel it's unfair and you feel that you should have got the promotion and instead of them. Maybe what you're feeling is annoyed at your own career progression, but what's happening is that you're directing that at a specific person. So then I'm digressing a little bit, but then, so that's kind of what I was talking about with point 2. So try and understand the cause or the root of the emotion. And then the final thing is to appreciate the emotion and its impact. I haven't come across a workplace example of this yet, but I was listening to a talk the other week that gave a really great example using the emotion of grief. And it was talking about how as a society we kind of, when we're feeling something that is sad, or perhaps we're feeling something painful, that we block that into being a negative emotion. But actually, if we were to stop and think about, okay, why is this grief making me feel sad? Perhaps what it is it's just your emotions wanting you to appreciate the thing that you've lost. And I thought taking a spin on grief, and maybe acknowledging it as your body's way of saying, hang on, we need to stop and just appreciate the amazing thing or the amazing person that we've lost here, is quite powerful way of interpreting that emotion, and to then reconsider its impact it's going to have on you moving into the future. So I will keep you posted when I find an equivalent emotion to be able to do kind of a mini case study on in the workplace. So teamwork and emotional intelligence. The quote we talked about a few minutes ago was talking about how our interaction with other people and our communication with other people is only increasing, and therefore teamwork in the workplace is becoming more and more important as well. But this is not simply about the ability to work in a team. Emotional intelligence and teamwork is about having sufficient empathy to be able to read and understand the emotions of the people you're working with. So a couple of practical points for this is to make sure you are really listening. So don't just give other people time to talk. Make sure you're actively listening and responding to their points of view. So this means give feedback, that's constructive feedback, and also ask questions. So if they've said something, don't just nod and agree, but question them. It could be because you want to challenge their point or because you want to know more. Also remember to put yourself in other people's shoes. So this is particularly important to recognizing that we work in increasingly cross-cultural and global teams, that you should really try and consider things from other people's perspectives, consider language, culture, experience before making any assumptions about people's opinions. I've just been reminded of an example that I'm sure Ivan won't mind me sharing with you guys. So Ivan's a member of the Corkscrew team, and the other week I was trying to arrange a meeting with him. And so I was like, hey, Ivan, I really want to talk through this project with you. Could you let me know when you're free this afternoon to talk? And he got back saying, well, like, depends what time. And so I said, well, give me some times, when are you free? And his response was, well, I'll be anytime after 5:30 because I'll be at the gym before that. And my gut reaction, I was like, but this is like work and I want to talk to him and it's the afternoon, and 5:30 isn't really afternoon anymore, that's evening, and I would hope that this project would come before going to the gym. So I was having all these emotions of kind of not understanding because it seemed a bit out of character. And a bit more digging revealed that we were having a miscommunication in terms of culture, because what I didn't realize that afternoon in Spanish refers to that kind of post 5 o'clock time. And so what had happened is that I had a misunderstanding of what I had said, and the way in which Ivan had interpreted it because of cultural difference. And so in the end, we laughed it off and it was fine, because actually I just needed to understand that when I say afternoon, that's a different time. And so Ivan and I now, we kind of have a fun understanding of booking in our meetings. Okay, another small but important example of emotional intelligence at work. Again, I hope the team doesn't mind that I'm sharing experiences from things that have happened recently. This was actually an unexpected example of emotional intelligence at work that happened this morning. I didn't necessarily realize when I asked the question, but afterwards I was reflecting on it and I was like, oh no, this was an important, again, cultural thing for me to understand. So here's a snippet of a conversation I had with Cecilia, who's recently joined our team. And I was trying to send her an email, and I realized that I wanted to type Cecilia, but I didn't know whether that was the name she wanted to go by. And it led to a funny conversation between us. But it's, again, these things that are important. I didn't want to make an assumption. Cecilia is from Sweden, and I'm sure already that I'm pronouncing her name wrong. But I didn't want to assume that by calling her Cici, my reasoning being that she spells her name Ceci, and I was there then making the name of CCCECE. I hope that you guys are with me when I try and explain that. But I didn't want to make an assumption from the beginning that that was okay to call her that. So I wanted to check in. But it made me realize that I was pleased that I did, because it could have been that I was sending her messages and emails every other day calling her Cici, and actually that would have perhaps grated on her because of, again, maybe that's just not her preferred name, or I'm making an assumption about something quite personal. So second Corkscrew team example for you. So beyond the 9 to 5, I've added this slide in because I want you to be mindful to the fact that although you might have a strictly workplace relationship with a colleague, life does continue outside of office hours. And as hard as people might try, it's not always possible to separate your professional and personal life. Emotional intelligence also involves being able to spot and respond appropriately to other people's emotions. So perhaps your manager was unusually dismissive of an idea that you pitched to them, or perhaps you feel one of your star teammates didn't contribute enough to the last meeting. Before you jump the gun and make an assumption, try to remember that they may be experiencing extreme emotions that and are not managing to self-regulate as well as they may usually do. It could be a painful anniversary, dipping into their overdraft, period cramps. You really don't have any idea of the emotions that other people could be experiencing. Because remember that on average, we have over 400 emotional experiences every day. This reminded me of one of my favorite words in the world, which is sonder, which is a word that doesn't have a direct translation to English, but it basically refers to an awareness that everyone else's life is as infinitely complicated as your own. This is a word that I came across a few years ago, and I use it to have a bit of a perspective check-in with myself every so often. I quite enjoy doing it on public transport, when I'm just mooching around, and if I've got a bit caught up with my own stuff and things that are going on in my own life, I find it quite useful to just remember that all of the complications and the wonderful things, but kind of the depth of my own life, that every single person that you come across has that. That could be your partner, it could be family, it could be colleagues, it could be someone that served you in a shop. It's just, I think, a nice thing to remember, and can quite often cause you to just stop before perhaps being reactive to a situation. So I've come around to the concluding points already. I've just realised that I may have been talking quite fast. I know it's sometimes a habit I have, so please let me know if I have been rushing on a bit. But I also wanted to keep this session short because it was just to provide some initial ideas about emotional intelligence. It's a really complicated topic, one that I'm enjoying learning more about, and we're going to continue to revisit it in the future. And I'm hoping that we'll perhaps be able to hear from you guys from your personal experiences of emotional intelligence in the workplace too. So I've got just 3 key takeaways. Like I said, I've kept this session nice and short because I'm hoping that it's brief enough that they're points that you'll be able to think about more once the session's done and also act upon in the coming days and weeks. So I think it's really important to be conscious of both your own and other people's emotions. And that's not just being conscious at the time that things might be happening, that's also making time to think about it once it's happened. So that leads on to the second point, to take time to reflect once the emotional charge of the situation has had time to calm down. I think we'll all be able to think back to a time where you kind of feel that perhaps your rational reaction to something is taken over by an emotional reaction. And so, yeah, just take time to reflect. And also remember the word sonder, and don't jump to assumptions about thinking that you understand other people's emotions, because as the wheel of emotions showed us, it's far more complicated than we perhaps initially think. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing my screen and try and return to the meeting. And I'm hoping that I might be able to unmute everyone. Let me see. Unmute. Okay, I think you guys, yeah?
No, I was thinking about the wheel because I actually are doing something similar right now, and I'm going to use that to add another layer to it. I started at New Year's, not recording, but tracking my emotions or the days that I'm feeling. So I sort of have all the range, and when I get home in the night, I just evaluate how my day's been, and then I just put it in chart in like an easy Excel document and just tracking it. So this wheel, it gives it another layer because I can divide the emotions even more. So yeah.
That's really cool. Is there like, is there kind of a reflecting period on tracking your emotions, like a kind of in terms of what you're doing it for?
I actually do it just for myself because I want to track how the year has been. Because always when it gets to December, oh, it's been such a great year, or it's been such a bad year. And it's not even true, because most of the days in the beginning of the year, even it can be great or it can be awful. But the last couple of months in the fall, those are the ones that you actually remember and think, hey, this is my year. So yeah, more in that. But that's why I think I can add this and then like reflect on it even more. So
I think that's awesome. I might have to copy you with that one. Because I quite often, like when I was putting together this presentation and I had those questions that I kept asking, I was like, emotional intelligence is something I'm interested in, and I like to think I have like a good level of it. But in terms of how regularly I check in with my emotions, I think it's definitely something that's made me realize that I should do more. And just to be more conscious of how my emotions are then affecting the way I kind of react to things. So that's really cool. Thank you for sharing that. I think I will definitely be attempting it. I'm going to wrap up the session because I promised to keep it nice and short. But what I'll be doing is posting the recording on Backstage, and it would be great if you guys have got any other comments or things you'd like to add, then add them to the comment section so that people who haven't attended and also the people that were also in the session can kind of get your feedback, and because I know all you guys will have interesting input to add to this topic. So I hope to see you in the conversations on Backstage, and I will keep you posted on the next event next week. Okay, well, thank you very much for joining me. It's very weird knowing all of you but not being able to see any of your lovely faces. And I hope that the format of the meeting on Zoom worked for everyone, that you're able to access the meeting okay. Any feedback you want to give me on that side would also be much appreciated. As like I said at the beginning, this is a new platform for us to deliver events on. Okay, well, I will say adios. I'm going to wave at you even though I can't see any faces. And I look forward to talking to you all again soon. Okay, bye.